Okay, so I will be providing an outline. It won't, I'm sorry I haven't finished it. I've been putting about 15 hours so far into preparation, but so the outline is on its way. So we're going to just jump in for now into the Torah. There's going to be certain terminologies that Reb Nachman is going to bring in this Torah. For example, makifim. So one can attempt to, whenever you're translating, there's always a word that you can find that is reasonably reflecting the intent behind Lashon HaKodesh. But the biggest danger in translations is selecting a word that is popular without really investigating what's the shoresh in Lashon HaKodesh, what do Chazal, often the Lashon HaKodesh itself reveals itself. So makifim we're going to look at very carefully because it's extremely pivotal to this Torah. Oros HaMakifim, lights of these Makifim, which we'll get to Be'ezrat Hashem, that the Tzaddik Emes, the Tzaddik and Hacham of the generation, is able to instill into the mind of the Talmidim. So what does it mean that a person has these Makifim? So I will avoid sometimes the actual typical translations until we first identify what the Shoresh is. And once we do that, then it will really open up worlds to us in terms of, I think, the intent behind what Rav Nachman is trying to deliver to us. So let's jump in anyway into Torah Zayin. So you've all got your own Likutei in front of you. Vayim ketz shenatayim yamim. This is a pasuk taken from Bereshis, Perek Mem Aleph. This is in reference to the 2 years of the 2 extra years that Yosef was in jail beyond the first 10, and Para had a chalam, and he was disturbed by it. At the end of the Torah, as was typical in the times of the Baal Shem HaKadosh and his Talmidim, when they gave a Torah on Shabbos, they started off with some sort of connection to the Parsha. So that's where this connection initiates. But right at the end of the Torah, we're going to circle and bring it all together. So the Torah actually begins with this: Ki merachamam yinahagem. This is a pasuk in Yeshayahu, Perek Mem Tes, pasuk Yud, where the actual perek there is a fascinating perek. It's referring to the final geula. Happens to be Yeshayahu was of the greatest of the Nevi'im. He was zeicha to the most nevuah than anyone else, for the reason that he loved the Jewish people so much, and everything he did, especially Birkas HaTorah, was with such simcha. He loved learning Torah so much that he was zeicha to the most nevuas. Of course, no one is as great as Moshe Rabbeinu, but Yeshayahu Navi in Perek Mem Tes is bemoaning the fact that he has a mission which partially will not be realized in his lifetime at all, and that mission is to get Klal Yisrael to do teshuvah, and he realizes it's a lost mission from the start. So he's bemoaning that at the beginning of the perek. But as he was the one out of all the Nevi'im who gave the most nechama to Klal Yisrael throughout his nevuos, he comes up to, in pasuk Yud, he's talking about the gula la'atid, not the gula of Nebuchadnezzar and Bavel, which some will say it's referring to that, but you look at the Mefarshim, you'll see he's referring really to the final gula. And what's that final gula going to look like? So in Mem Tes pasuk Yud, which is what Rav Nachman is starting this Torah based upon. Let's look at the pasuk. I just quote it to you outside. Inside. Pasuk Yud. Lo yiravu. At the time of the final geula, there will not be starvation. Now you can take it on simple level, starvation of food, of bread, or you can take it at a more deeper level, and that would be, of course, starvation for Torah. Kiruv Elokim, to be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Torah, Tefillah, to be far away from Hashem is the worst hunger of all. V'lo yitzma'u, they will not be thirsty. and we know that mayim is very frequently used as a mashal, an analogy for Torah. They will not be thirsty. Why? V'lo yakem shara v'shamesh. They will not be beaten, hit with the heat or the sun. Ki, and here's the words where Rav Nachman is taking from. Ki merachamam yinahagem. The one who is merciful on Pshat level is referring to HaKadosh Baruch himself, the Merachim of all Merachamim. Yinahagem will lead them. V'al mibuye mayim yinahalem. And he will lead them on the streams of waters. Yinahalem. That's where he will lead them. So we know that Nachal Neveh Mekor Chochma is an acronym for Nachman, for Rav Nachman, so it would actually fit there, but he's referring to, there's going to be a leader who will be such a Rachaman, have so much Rachamim, that he's capable of leading. The Pasuk is referring really on Pshat level, HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. So let's see as we unfold what's going on here. Hainu. So comes along Rav Nachman and he starts off based on these two words. The one who has mercy, he will be able to give leadership. Hainu mishu rachaman, someone who has real rachamim, hu yachol liyos manhig. He's able to be a leader. La'afuke, which would exclude, if someone hasn't got rachamim, which he's going to qualify, he's going to describe and define what does it mean that a person has rachamim. If he hasn't got, he can't lead. V'tzarich leida. One needs to know, how do you go with your Rachmanus? Because Rachmanus can go too far. It can be not enough and it can be way too much. So his first example is, Ki ala rishayim, ala reitzim, v'gazlanim asul rachem, which is a very strong language, for a Rasha and for murderers and for thieves, asa is forbidden to have rachamim. This is not really a shter to Reish Pei Beis, which famously says even if you've got a Rasha Gamor, you have to look for a Tzad Zchus, any Nekuta Tova that will pull him out of the level of Chayv that he's in and bring him up to a higher level. So Parsla Chachma points out over here that actually he claims that the Rishayim that's being referred to and the Roitzim and Gazlanim is referring to non-Jews, not referring to Jews. Now, please be merciful me. I once saw, but I haven't seen it in years, and I really should have asked my Rebbe Chaim Kramer to help me with this one. But I once saw many years ago, the Zohar says, Has v'shalom, that there was ever a Rasha of a Jew, or Has v'shalom, that there's ever a good goy. I don't know who's listening to this. So the Zohar qualifies itself and says, if you ever see a Rasha who's a Jew, you can be certain that his neshama is not a Jewish neshama. His body is Jewish, his neshama isn't. If you ever see a non-Jew who's good, it's impossible. I'm not going into all the details of what happened at Har Sinai, that the injection from the Nachash was removed from us. And unfortunately, it came back a little bit with the Cheta Egel in our participation of that, because we actually didn't do it. We weren't involved in the Cheta Egel. That was the Erev Rav, which fits over here. But if you meet a goy who's good, it's only possible because his body is a non-Jew. His parents are non-Jewish, or mother was non-Jewish, but his neshama is actually Jewish. So it's not really a place to go into this now. But when Eliyahu Navi comes and heralds the coming of Mashiach, it has to be Eliyahu Navi, because no non-Jew is allowed to live in Eretz Yisrael. And in Kibbutz Goliath, in the ingathering of the exiles, how are you going to know who's really Jewish and who's not? Only a Navi can tell you that. So Eliyahu Navi, for a number of different reasons, never died, and one of them is so that you've got this actual unbroken Masorah from Moshe Rabbeinu, Eliyahu Navi being Pinchas, if you're going with that. You have an unbroken Masorah of who Eliyahu Navi is in having a perfect transmission without any break on any shaila. That's why Teku, we're going to actually ask all us fakers to Eliyahu Navi. But one of the things he has to determine is who's actually a Jew and who's not a Jew. So I did hear in the name of Moshe Shapiro, Lama Shalom, from Rabbi Tatz, who heard it from him, Rabbi Akiva Tatz, that there's approximately 100 million Jews in the world today. Now we know in terms of an actual census, it's about maybe 13, 14 million. But there are so many Yidden who assimilated, especially in, believe it or not, in Italy and in Spain. That's why you might notice, I don't know if how much you've traveled or how many Italians you know or how many Spanish you know, but it's interesting that there are certain ingredients in their personality that match up, not perfectly, to Yidden. So I'm not going into that in any detail.
Food.
What?
Food.
Their relationship to food, their relationship to family, their relationship to comradeship is very, very different to much of the rest of the world. Family still is a huge Indian by both the Spanish culture, so to speak, and also the Italians. So I'm not going into detail, but suffice to say, there's been so much assimilation. But every Jewish girl who Rachmanus married a non-Jew, her children are Jewish. If she has girls who married non-Jews, her children are Jewish. And so it comes out there's many, many more. So this would fit over here where we don't know who they are, but Aliyah Navi will reveal who's Jewish because no non-Jew is allowed to live in Eretz Yisrael. So when Mashiach comes, this will be clarified once and for all. So Parpas L'Chachma claims that this Rishonim is not referring to Yidden. That kind of helps clear up something. But in terms of Beis Din, if someone had to come to Beis Din, you can't apply Reish Pei Beis to a Beis Din. In Reish Pei Beis, where you have a mitzvah to be done chavschus on every single person, including a Rasha Gamur, that is not a directive for Dayanim on Beis Din. Dayanim on Beis Din have to paskin based on information that is based on kosher witnesses. It cannot be even on the track record of someone who has got a track record of being a Rasha. That's an Issa D'Oraisa. They can't include his track record in their being done on him. So it's very important that the lashon here is really meduyak asur l'rachem. I'm not allowed to have Rachmanus on a Rasha, Ratzeach, and a Gazlan. Unlike, I don't want to get into any detail, but unlike what's happening today with much of the liberal agenda, is actually not only not bringing real criminals to proper justice, and with all sorts of ridiculous excuses, including, well, he was insane, which it makes no sense because every single father of a Jewish child at bar mitzvah, we make a bracha, most of the time not b'shem malchus, baruch shepatrani me'onesh hazeh. Now, if that kid later on can say, look, I'm damaged, and I'm scarred, and the reason why I've been doing these things is because my father, my mother, this and that, so then the whole bracha would be a bracha levatala. You can't say b'shem malchus because always got this excuse that I'm scarred for life. No, if you're an adult, you're a baldas, you're mukhiyam. And if someone does an aveira, that has to be brought to justice. So it's asur l'rachem. That's not the place for rachamim. Rachamim is a very special word. We've looked at it before in previous Torahs, where the three-letter root rechem, which is the shorish of rachamim, refers to the womb. There's nowhere in the physical universe that exudes and demonstrates so much rachamim as the womb. The child is benefiting inside the womb of its mother, and it has done nothing to receive all those valuable benefits. Insulation, warmth, protection, nutrition, it's all taking place. And we're going to see in a few moments what Rav Nachman is going to tell us. So it's the most rachamim-dika place that you can ever come to. Even the three letters, rechem, is made up of two words. Ruach are the first two letters, which refers to the environment. Sometimes you say, I like the ruach here. And cham, the last two letters, is warm. So the actual environment inside the rechem is perfect conditions for this child who starts off at the moment of conception as a mere brain and heart. That's what, if you took a zera under the microscope, at the moment of conception, it starts off as a microscopic heart and brain. And it's from that heart and brain, the entire skeletal system is developed, and muscular system and nervous system. Every system within the body is created by this incredible divine intelligence contained in the brain, because it's powered by the neshama. And that's developed over a 9-month period. It's extraordinary. It's absolutely extraordinary what's going on inside that rechem. So that's a place of pure rachamim. V'chein, mish eino yodea eich lisnagig im harachmanus. If someone doesn't know how to use his rachmanus, he's a rachman, but he doesn't know how to apply it. As ayuchal lerachim al tinoik shel arba yamim. He could have mercy, rachamim, on an infant who's only 4 days old. Parasal Hachma offers that might be significant of the lowest spheres. But I'm not qualified to go into that in any real detail, but he's trying to bring out that there is a significance to number 4 over there. So how could this person misuse his rachamim? Liten loy machal. He'll give a 4-day-old child actual food, hatzarach legadol, which actually is only appropriate for an adult, v'loy lekatan kazeh, not for an infant like this. Ki katan kazeh tzrichim lazoynei rak al dei chalav davka. He's only meant to be taken from milk, and I'm going to qualify that. It's referring to the milk of its mother. Cow's milk, it doesn't belong strictly. It's a brilliant scheme to make a lot of money, but cow's milk doesn't belong inside an infant. It's really mother's milk. Now we've got formulas. I'm not going into that in detail, but there are many infants who suffer terrible rashes. And if one doesn't go to a regular doctor, who I think I'm taking the chance of saying that amongst Breslov, this might be okay to say, if one doesn't go to a regular doctor, but to people who actually still have yedias in recognizing that symptoms are symptomatic, and that by addressing symptoms, you're not solving the problem. You've got to go to the origin of the symptom. So when a child has horrible rashes over its body, and we're talking about an infant, someone who's a mumcha will understand, based on the type of rash, which foods the mother might be eating that's going into her milk, that's now the child is getting a reaction to. So this is something I'm personally actually familiar with. This is not a mystery or something that's unusual. So the chalav of a mother is extremely important, and as we know from Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, and Antoninus, who was the Caesar of the Roman Empire in the time of Rabbeinu HaKadosh, he actually converted to Judaism later on, and the whole starting point of that was when these two children were switched. I'm not going into details now, but you probably are familiar of how when Rabbeinu HaKadosh's father went to Rome to remove a gzeira against us, and I'm not going into the story now, but it ended up that the mother of Rabbeinu Kodesh gave milk to Antoninus. So that's where the Yirat Shemayim and Ahavas Hashem and Yiras Hashem and Simchas Chaim that's in the human being is converted into the food, because you're made up of food. And that food affects the child that it's transferred to. Rav Nachman talks about the significance of insignificance. That's a good line, actually. There's nothing that's insignificant, nothing. Even in Ois Meriva, in Sefer HaMidas, he brings there, I think it's Chaf Aleph, in Chelik Aleph, he says that when you get an itch or a scratch, you're scratching yourself, or an itch, either from a bite or some other, it's not insignificant. In Shemayim, there's a kitrug against that person, and they're supposed to get a physical harm. But the Rachmanus, the chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is that this itch, and now the scratch from it, is a substitute for the otherwise much more serious physical harm. There's nothing that's insignificant, nothing. And because of that, one needs to know that the correct food for a child is chalav ha'em. So, and then I don't think they had formulas in those days. So, as yuchal lerachem al tinok shel arba yamim, liten loy machal hatzarach legadol v'loy lekatan kazeh, ki katan kazeh tzrichim lazunay rak al yedei chalav davka, only with milk specifically. Al kain tzarach leda eich lisnaig. A person needs to know how to behave in my Rachmanus, with their Rachmanus. He has to have only the milk of its mother. He's not saying its mother, but that's what I'm adding on. Ulegadol, but an adult, machal atzarich lo, the food that's appropriate for an adult. V'chein al kol echad ve'echad tzrichim le'rachim b'ma shetzarich lo. Every person has to get the level dosage of Rachmanus that's needed for that person. Every child is different. Even if you have twins, the way you discipline one twin may not work at all for the other twin. So one twin could be very receptive to discipline, and on the first time they're told, don't do that, no questions asked, and they don't do it. And they don't, not anymore. Another kid, who's the twin, will keep pushing the red line and be very adverse to parents' discipline. And they're both from the same womb and only minutes apart. And Hanach Lenar Alpi Darkai means exactly that. Every single child has their specific journey and their destination, and the luggage they're going to take with them is not the same luggage that's needed for another kid. The way they have to be mechunach, raised and trained. I don't like using the word educated because it's a Latin term that actually doesn't mean what the word chinuch means. Chinuch comes from a two-letter root, chen, which means to connect. That's what bechina is. Bechina is a chen, it's a connection. So every single person needs to receive Rachmanus in a different way. And it can't be one size fits all, or one size fits a lot of people. And that's why we're going to get to, in a few moments, Moshe Rabbeinu, he was able to identify the needs of every single individual. And that's why when he saw that he was not going to be able to get his children, any of his sons, to be the next manig after him, which was his initial expectation, he begged HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then you've got to choose someone who's got the ability to understand the mindset of every single person. Kol ruach, of every single mind. Ruach means mind, spirit, or can also mean thought. To understand the mindset of each person. And that's why eventually Yeshua was chosen. But the key point in Ois Aleph of this paragraph is that a real manhig has to know how to use his Rachmanus. And it's an individually tailored Rachmanus. It's not generic. Okay, any questions on Ois Aleph? I'm going to jump into Ois Base. Any questions? V'Rachman kazeh hu rak Moshe Rabbeinu. Who are we referring to when we say this Rachman? This person who is able to have Rachmanus. And if we're going to go with the word Rechem as the place where the child is nurtured, we're talking about a place which provides everything that embryo requires in order to grow till it reaches its first level of independence, which is the cutting of the umbilical cord, and it becomes its own entity, but is still totally dependent on its mother and to some extent its father for its continued growth until it becomes its next level of independence. There's lots of levels of independence which we're going to see fits into the whole concept of makifim, which Rav Nachman is going to talk about. The job of a tzaddik hacham ador is to instill in a person's mind another level of insight that will enable a person to grow and grow and grow. So a child, for example, I'm just making it very simple. A child, their first, if you want to call it, level of independence is the cutting of the umbilical cord. The next level, you might argue, is once they're weaned from their mother and now they're able to slowly take actual solids. Another level, I'm not telling you this in chronological order because the child's growing simultaneously on all levels, physically and emotionally and mentally and spiritually. That means to say that the child is, as it grows in its first months, it's actually becoming aware of its own body. And as it does, eventually, as the muscles of the child stretch and flex, the child actually ends up moving its body along the ground, eventually crawling, eventually standing up against a surface, a chair, and all these are different levels of independence. The moment the child moves one foot forward, and it will fall and start again, fall and start again, fall, and it will keep doing this until it's walking without falling. And walking is a whole new level of independence. We're going to see it in the language of Rav Nachman very soon when he talks about being Ma'amid Talmidim. the importance of standing up students. It doesn't say make students. He's using the language of Chazal because Chazal only spoke emes. Emes means there's no sheker. There's no dilution. Emes means it's 100%. This is what Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, who told it to Yeshua, to the Zkenim, the Nevi'im, and Anshe Knesset Gedola, etc. So to be ma'amid talmidim is the exact correct lashon, because the goal of growing the person you're learning with, or teaching, or raising this child is not only to actually inject your mind into their mind. That's true. But it's also to give them the ability to be ma'amid by themselves. And that's why the Lashon, first Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, which I think is very telling, you've got 3 directives from the Anshe Knesset Gedola, who for the first time are putting in writing in Pirkei Avos. It's the most exceptional of all the Masechtas, because it's not loyal to one particular mitzvah. All the other Masechtas are loyal to specific mitzvahs and tariyag. Rav Bartanura says this in the first Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, that Avos is exceptional because it's all over the place. Ben Adam lechavero, ben Adam la'atzmai, ben Adam la'makom. So when it's talking about the Masorah, it's giving you the essence of the Masorah for the first time in writing. And the second item there, after telling us to be having mutunim medim, which we're going to see it in this Torah as well, not today, but we're going to get to there. Having mutunim medim, be deliberate, careful, and thinking when you make a judgment. Everyone's making a judgment, even though the Mishnah seems to be talking only to Dayanim. Ve'emidu talmidim harbe, and stand up many students. That's one taich. But actually, if it really meant talmidim harbe, it should actually write typically harbe talmidim. The harbe is arguably not going on the number of students you should stand up. It's going on how many times you should stand up your students. Help them pick them up again and again and again. And that's what we're going to get to. Be'ezrat Hashem, I think it's the core of this Torah, is that we need a Hacham and a Rahman, a Rebbe. Those are the languages, a Tzaddik, those are the languages that Rav Nachman uses in this Torah, that will be able to reach the highest people of the highest madrigas and show them that there's a lot more to go. And therefore, compared to how much more there is, they actually haven't even begun the journey. That's not to be mi'ash them, not to put them down, not to put them in their place. No, on the contrary, in order to not let them ever think that, okay, I've got kavanah, I finished Shas, I remember Shas, I remember Shulchan Aruch, I can paskin anywhere. Now what? No, it's not. Never be satisfied with one's place. That was Rav Nachman's personality. He's never. Don't take any pressure from this. It's just it's a mahalach. He talked many times about not going too fast either. But if you take the grammar seriously, it's actually not. It can go both ways. It can be talking about the number of students, but it can also more correctly be referring to how many times you stand that student up. So this tzaddik, which we're going to come across very soon, is someone who can reach the highest people and show them they haven't started their career in being close to Hashem, because Hashem's infinite. And then reach all the way down, the same one Hacham, same Gadol Hador, same tzaddik, is able to reach the lowest of Jews and show them that they are extremely close to Hashem, Hashem's close to them, and therefore they should never despair. So that, I think, is one, possibly the core of the whole Torah. But we're going to get to that. In the meantime, we're unfolding the profile of what this Rahman, who is able to be a manig because he's a Rahman, what is that profile? So Rav Nachman suddenly reveals in what sounds like a dogmatic term, Rahman hazeh hu rak Moshe Rabbeinu. There's only one person who really fully qualifies for the profile of the manhig that we're referring to, and that is Moshe Rabbeinu himself. Ki hu haya manhig Yisrael, he was the leader of the Jewish people, v'yiyeh manhig la'atit, and he will be in the future as well. He'll be in the future, that's why we say, as Yashir Moshe, the Yud in Yashir means he will sing. As, then he will sing, in reference to Perek Yudada and Perek Tesvav in Parashas B'Shalach, when we exited Mitzrayim and we crossed the Yam Suf, we sang the song. And the language there is, Az Yashir, Moshe Rabbeinu will sing. Chazal learn out from there and from a lot of other places. This is a raya, a proof for Tchias HaMesim, because it says he will sing. And it's referring to when Moshe Rabbeinu will bring all the Yidden from Galus back to Eretz Yisrael. And that's when Moshe Rabbeinu will enter Eretz Yisrael, but not in his physical lifetime, in his 120 years that he lived. It's going to be only after the final Tchias HaMesim. So at Tchias HaMesim, I'm not going into this in detail now, but the Radvaz quotes Reb Sadia Gaon, amongst a lot of Mekubalim also agree, Ramban and others, that there will not be one Tchias HaMesim, there'll be two Tchias HaMesim. There'll be two times. The first one, there'll be four groups of people who get the immediate Tchiyah. As soon as the Mashiach comes, there'll be a Tchias HaMesim of Moshe Rabbeinu, Aaron HaKohen and his sons, and also all the tzaddikim of all the generations, especially those who cried chatzos, and they so badly craved for the Geula. Rav Sadia Gaon says this Al Pi Svara. I don't know if there's an actual written makor, but Rav Sadia Gaon is a Gaon, one of the Gaonim. So he brings that the Svara dictates that it has to be this way. It cannot possibly be that all the tzaddikim of previous generations who craved for the final Geula, when Hashem would be Echad B'chol Ha'aretz, it's impossible that they would not get to be participating in that Geula. So therefore, as soon as Mashiach comes, there's going to be a first Tchiyah. All the tzaddikim will come back to life, and there's a fourth group of all the Jews who died al Kiddush Hashem. So you can ask who you ever want to qualify. Does that include everyone who died in the Holocaust? I asked that once to Rabbi Chaim Kramer, and he told me it includes every single Jew who's killed because he's a Jew, even if he wasn't from. So that's an extraordinary thought. That these are the four groups. 40 years later will be the second Tchias HaMesim for the rest of the Hamoinam, so to speak. So they'll be missing out on the Geula. Maybe they're in the grandstands. How do you call it in America? In England, they call the bleachers. Thank you. I'm only here 38 years. So it's taking me a while to get used to all the lingo. So that's going to be the second Tchiyah. It's good to try and get into the first category, if one can. V'hu yiyeh hamanik la'atid. So Moshe Rabbeinu is going to be the manik in the future as well. Kima shahaya hu she'iyeh. What happened is what will be. This is a pasuk from Koheles, Perek Aleph, and Rav Atiyah brings from Likutei Halachas that Rav Nosson brings out the first three letters of the Rashi Tevos. Ma shahaya hu she'iyeh is Mem Shin Hey, which spells out Moshe. So it's merumas in that pasuk from Koheles, and Koheles, as you know, he was the tzaddik emes of his generation, Shlomo HaMelech, Hacha Mikol Adam. Nobody will ever be as wise as Koheles, as Shlomo HaMelech. Thank you. So he was meramis in what happened will be is in reference to Tchias HaMesim, when Moshe Rabbeinu, who was leader, will be leader a second time round. Ki Moshe Rabbeinu hayaloi harachmanus be'emes al Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu, why was he the manik? Because he had this qualification, which Rav Nachman is offering as the main ingredient for the profile of a manik, is Rachmanus. And what's that Rachmanus? Rachmanus be'emes al Yisrael. Emes is a very strong language. We usually translate it as truth, which is partially true, but not completely true. The word emes correctly translates as reality. Happens to be included in reality is truth. This was taught to me by Rabbi Shimon Schwab. He told me this himself. The word emet really means reality, and it's a pity to call it truth because it's not giving a grasp on the full picture. Emes really means the full picture, and that's why only HaKadosh Baruch Hu can be emes. Hashem Elokeichem emes. He's the only one. Why? Because I'm living in Olam HaSheker. There's no way I can be fully emes. There are exceptions, and that's Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu went in the ways of Hashem to such an extent, v'halachta b'drachav. It's one of Tarek mitzvahs. Everyone agrees. It's in Perek Kavches pasuk tes. V'halachta b'drachav. Go in his ways. The entire Torah Dvara is based on this pasuk. Go in his ways. And what's that mean? Go follow Hashem's midas. Nobody reached the pinnacle, the peak of following in Hashem's ways more than Moshe Rabbeinu. The halach, the bedracha, means to reveal the tselem Elokim that every Jew is made from. Tselem is literally a reflection. Elokim, the power of powers. That's what Elokim really means. We're going to come up with this a few times, why it's so important. So what we're going to see is that Moshe Rabbeinu, he was a Rachaman in the absolute reality. He knew exactly who to be tough with and who to be soft with. And that's a really, really hard thing to accomplish in a lifetime. Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who went B'Tselem Elokim more than any human being, more than Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, not Hashem to take away. And it's brought in a sefer called Mitzvahs Hashem, that what's it mean to be Tselem Elokim, a reflection of the power of all powers? So read Moshe backwards, and you read the word Hashem. Why? Because nobody reached the place where he reached, where he followed exactly how Hashem wanted him to be. In terms of it, right now it's in the context of Rachmanus. What was that? Umasa nafsho b'shvil Yisrael. How was that manifest? Because he was willing to die for the Jewish people. To such an extent, can you imagine HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks to you directly and tells you, look, I'm fed up with all the people that you're trying to help. I'm just going to wipe them all out, and I'm going to start a whole new family just with you, a whole new nation just with you. So I think most of us, this is my personal opinion, I would go, hey, Rebbe Shalom, you're the boss. Whatever you say goes. I can't argue with you. And yet Moshe Rabbeinu, he takes this threat that Hashem is going to wipe out Klal Yisrael. It's not once, it happened a few times, especially by the Chet HaEgel, and Moshe Rabbeinu even went so far to say, if you take one hair off the head of one Jew, this is how I heard it from Rabbi Rosenfeld at Malav Shalom, then take my life first. Macheni misifrecha, asher katavta. Take me, wipe me out, erase me. Erase me means every single time it says, Vayidam Hashem El Moshe, take my name out. I don't want to be part of this. So that's a huge leverage that Moshe Rabbeinu was using over here. But he knew to do that. But that was considered Rachmanus. Because the ultimate Rachmanus, as we're going to see soon, is to have Rachmanus on whom? Klal Yisrael. And when?
When they're down.
When they're down. And he's going to talk about Avoinus. Avoinus is very serious, because an Avoin means it's done b'mezid. It's not the worst, there's worse. Pesha is lehachis. But Avoin is the father of Pesha. Avon is the starting point. It's really, really bad. It's much worse than Chet. Chet is a mistake. The Christian translation is sin. Please don't go there. It doesn't mean sin. It means a mistake. That's a whole different mindset. So we're going to look at that word.
What is Avon again?
Sorry, Avon is when a person does an Aveira b'mezid. He does it knowing it's an Aveira and he still does it. But it's not b'pesha. It's not lahachis. It's not because he's rebelling against Hashem. It's not to get it's rebelling, but it's not to get Hashem angry. Moshe Rabbeinu, I just want to give you a glimpse of his profile, because the Torah Shebichtav gives us very few clues about Moshe Rabbeinu before Hashem spoke to him for the first time. Hashem speaks to him for the first time, Perek Gimel, Pasuk Aleph and Beis. Hashem speaks to Moshe Rabbeinu at the snare. Prior to that, there's a description of three instances, three particular occasions took place, and they take place in the, I think it's 7 psukim. I should have looked it up before. I think it's in Perek Beis. I know it's in Perek Beis. In Shmois, I think it's Pasuk Yud Aleph through Yod Zayin. The first thing you know about Moshe Rabbeinu, you're only told 3 things before Hashem speaks to him. What's that telling you? Maybe there's some clues in these 3 things that tells me why would he be selected more than any other human being in world history to be the one to take us out of slavery and bring the Torah down, and through him give it to the Jewish people forever. He's called Ish HaElokim. So it's an amazing description. A human being, he's a man. HaElokim, of the Almighty. Power of all powers. So it's an amazing item to put on his resume. So what do we know about him before before Hashem reveals himself. So you're told only 3 incidents. Number 1, he goes out and he sees a Mitzri beating a Jew to death. Now remember, what I'm trying to help here is build a case for how Rav Nachman is calling Moshe Rabbeinu the ultimate Rahman. He sees a Mitzri beating a Jew to death. And he looks from one side to the next, obviously, and he's 19 years old at the time. The most he's 20, but all the Midrashim say he's 19. Look at Medrash Tanchum, he's 19 years old at the time. And he sees Ein Ish. There's no man is going to come. No one's going to convert to Judaism out of this Mitzri. He's a lowlife. He just did a terrible avera of adultery. He's Chai Misa for that alone. But anyway, he's beating a Jew to death. And Moshe Rabbeinu understood that if you, in the world of bullying, I'm just going to touch on this briefly because it's going to open up eyes to who we're talking about when Rav Nachman wants us to understand there's basically this one ingredient on the profile of a manhig. He's got to be a Rahman. Now you can unpack Rahman, which we will, and there's a lot there. But what's included here? He killed a non-Jewish Egyptian soldier. There are 3 people in the bully formula. There's the bully, there's the victim of the bullying. Liberals today don't like calling them victims, they call them targets. And the third person, of course, is the bystander. In the world of bystanders, there are actually 3 types of bystanders. You've got bystander number 1, who agrees with the bully. Bystander number 2 does not agree with the bully, but is too afraid to stand up to the bully, so he keeps quiet. He doesn't want to be the next target. The vast majority of bystanders are category number 2. Category number 3 is the bystander who's so outraged by the injustice of what he sees, he takes action and does something about it. A bully is someone who maintains an unbalance of power. That's what a bully is. Constant unbalance of power. So if the person tries to get away from this power, the bully comes back on top of him, won't let go of him. There's more to say on that, but I'm just giving you that as a simple, generic, objective definition. Moshe Rabbeinu is whom in this action that he took of killing the Mitzri? Bystander number 3. The next day, you're talking about within a 24-hour period, the Pasuk reveals that Moshe Rabbeinu comes out. He's still trying to help Klal Yisrael. I'm not going into Midrashim, which is a fascinating Midrashim about how he helped Klal Yisrael and get off Shabbos. He was just brilliant negotiator with Parai. But he goes out to see what else can he do for the Jewish people, and he sees one Jew picking his hand up to hit another Jew. One of them is Aviram, the other one is Dasan. Dasan and Aviram, they're actually brothers, but they're also brothers-in-law. And in this particular case, the wife of, if I'm not getting it wrong, of Dasan was the one who was abused by the Mitzri, who Moshe Rabbeinu killed yesterday and hid in the sand. And Aviram is the brother of that woman, and he doesn't want Dasan to divorce his wife. So they're getting into a siksuk, into a conflict, and one lifts his hand up to hit the other. The Torah says Russia. The next words came out of Moshe Rabbeinu's mouth. He didn't call him a Russia. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't call Dasan or Aviram a Russia. The words next were Lama takereyacha. Why are you hitting your brother? And what happened next? Oh, so first of all, he sees 2 Jews getting into conflict. So what does he do? Is he bystander number 1? He agrees with either of them? No. Bystander number 2 is too afraid to get involved? I see nothing. And walks away, turns around. No. Bystander number 3. Yeah. So here you see a second instance, and it's within a 24-hour period, is bystander number 3. And what does Dasan and Aviram famously do in response?
They turn on him.
They turn on him. Who are you? Who made you judge over us? And then what do they do next? They go to Paro and squeal on Moshe Rabbeinu. They rat on him. Unbelievable. And what's the consequence? Moshe Rabbeinu is paying the price now of bystander number 3, who will not stand for injustice. He almost got executed, If it weren't for the Rachmanus of Hashem, his neck was about to be decapitated, and Hashem made all the people around that area blind and deaf, and Moshe Rabbeinu was saved, his neck turned to marble, and he ran away. Where did he go? This is all within 7 psukim. He goes to Midian. Now Midrashim, Sefer Yasha will tell you there was a 60-year gap. He went to Ethiopia, etc. He even became a king over there. But putting that aside, I'm just sharing with you the only thing you and I know from the Torah itself is these 3 incidences. He arrives in Midian, and there he comes to a well, and there are shepherds there who are about to molest the 7 daughters of Yisro. Yisro had 7 daughters. At this point already he had decided to let go of all the Avodah Zarah. And Moshe Rabbeinu turns up. Someone once told me, why does Yisro have 7 names? Because every time he married off one of his daughters, he went bankrupt. So he had to so that's a mini b'tudika. It's not what happened at all. So he had 7 daughters, and they were the shepherdesses of all the flocks, because no one would have anything. He was put into Chayrim because he let go of Avodah Zarah, and they were about to be abused by these shepherds. That's what Medrash Haggadah tells us. And what does Moshe Rabbeinu do? Why is he in Midian? Because he stood up for his own people. And now, oh no, not again. I know nothing. I see nothing. He turns around. Vayakam v'yashian. He gets up and he saves them. What happens next? Just a couple psukim later. He's already the shepherd of Yisro, marries Sipporah, and he arrives at the Mount Har HaElokim, Har Chorev, and Hashem speaks to him, says, "You're my man." The only thing you know about this Rahman is that he has a spine. And that spine is able to stand up to anybody. I don't care who. I'll risk my life. Oh, I need someone like you, says Hashem. You're exactly the right person I need. Because you can stand up for my people, and even the ultimate, and forgive me for putting it this way, the ultimate bullying would be if a Kadosh Baruch Hu bullies Moshe Rabbeinu and says, I'm starting again with you and I'm wiping out the whole Jewish people. You have to understand how far that means. Who's all the Jewish people? Moshe Rabbeinu is going to be the only one to start the whole nation. So let me share with you the Bach in Sota, Daf Yud Dalet Amud Aleph. This is an intro to who Moshe Rabbeinu is, and it also, Be'ezrat Hashem, it will help us understand who's writing this Torah, who's capable of writing this Torah, who's capable of having these insights and describing that there's such a thing as a Hacham, Tzaddik Hador, who's a Tzaddik Emes, who is able to bring down to the lowest of the lowest, makifim, abilities to understand things that they couldn't grasp till now. And the greatest thing to grasp is that I count. That I'm, as nobody as I know I am, I still count in Hashem's eyes. And therefore, I should never ever despair. Because despair, as we've already talked about many times, is a pure illusion. It's not reality. It's a self-induced illusion that I can't do anything to help myself. So, in Sota, you'll know that the pasuk, we just read it last week, tells us, "V'loi yada ish es kvurasai." Nobody knows where Moshe Rabbeinu is buried. Some even say that Moshe Rabbeinu himself doesn't know. Nobody knows, and why can't they know? Why can't they know? So I'm going to share with you the Bach. V'am Rabbi Chama bar Chanina mipnei ma nistate kivroi shel Moshe me'enei basav adam. Why is it that the grave of Moshe Rabbeinu is hidden from any human being? Because Hashem knows, she'atit, in the future, Beis HaMikdash licharev, the temple will be destroyed, and the Jewish people will be exiled from their land. Maybe someone or people will come to the cave of Moshe Rabbeinu at that hour, v'yamdu b'b'chiyah, They'll stand there crying, v'yitzchannu, and they'll supplicate, they'll beg, Moshe. Look, this is the Bach. This is contrary to most of the Farshim are talking about going to Kivrei Tzaddikim, that you're not supposed to speak to the Tzaddik himself, only in the schus of the Tzaddik. But actually there are others who say, no, you can, but in order to avoid the possibility of people claiming that this is avodah zarah, so most of the time the poskim who talk about not speaking directly to the Tzaddik are the ones that are quoted. But here's a Bach who is actually telling you, no, they would actually go, and they would say to him, Moshe Rabbeinu, Amud, b'tfilah, stand up in tfilah, b'aldeinu, for our sake. V'omed Moshe u'mevatel et ha'gzeira. Moshe Rabbeinu would stand up in tfilah and cancel the decree to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. Why? Mipnei shechavivim tzadikim b'misasam yoseh mibchayehem. Because tzadikim are more beloved in their passing away from this world than they are in the next. The Ben Yehoyada tells us, that's the Ben Ish Chai, that the reason why no one is allowed to know where he's buried is similar to what the Bach is saying, because if the lowest Jew, a Rasha, were to turn up at Moshe Rabbeinu's kever and ask for the Geula to bring Mashiach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu would be forced to bring him. Why? Because when Moshe Rabbeinu, he knew tefillah works. Period. There's no such thing as a wasted tefillah. That's a Gemara in Brachas Chaf Aleph. Ulevai shispala adam kolayem kulay. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. If only we would daven all day long. In the Yushalmi, in Perek Aleph, I think it's Halacha Hey, or it might be Dalet, sorry, where the same Rabbi Yochanan is quoted. There's a few extra words. She'ein shum tefillah ne'avedet klal. Because there's no such thing as a wasted tefillah. If you don't see it answered in your lifetime, it might be held in escrow for your children or grandchildren. But there's no such thing as a wasted tefillah. That was the whole Tinyana against Noach, because he didn't daven to save the generation. And when he came out of the teva, the famous Tikkunei Zohar tells us he fell on the floor, uncontrollable tears, and he actually said, Rebbeinu Shloim, why didn't you have Rachmanus on your creation? And Hashem, instead of empathizing with the tzaddik that he called a tzaddik, the first person in world history who called a tzaddik was Noach, ish tzaddik haya. So Hashem said, Roya shoita. This is very fitting for what we're learning here. You foolish shepherd. A shepherd is supposed to care. 120 years, you did what I told you to do. You're tzaddik. Chassid, no. You did what you were told, but you didn't go beyond. You built the teva, and when people asked you why, which was the purpose of me having you build a teva for 220 years, you told them, because if you don't do tshuva, Hashem's going to bring a mabul, and everyone's going to perish. You did what you were told, but you didn't go beyond that. You didn't daven for the generation. Holocaust survivors, many of them suffered terribly after the war, more from the guilt of survival than anything else. Especially those who lost the whole dynasty of the entire family. Brothers, sisters, cousins, parents, everyone. And they come out of the Holocaust and they feel guilty for being alive, because why me? My brothers, sisters, I had a cousin who were way more righteous, and why was I chosen to survive and not them? And they suffered with this guilt. So imagine Noach, the sole survivor of the entire Holocaust of the Mabul. How would that affect his self-esteem? So Noach was an ish tzaddik. He had a good self-esteem. So he answered back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He said, I thought of davening to save them, but it appeared to me that the generation was so wicked, they wouldn't have deserved your Rachmanus. So what was Hashem's answer? You're right. I would not have accepted your tefillahs because they didn't deserve it. But your tefillahs would have been held in escrow. And you should have davened because you were the tzaddik of the generation. That's the tzaddik emes. A tzaddik emes wants everybody to come close to Hashem. Even if Hashem says, I'm done with these people, he'll still argue and beg. That's really why you see, when we're going to look at it, Be'ezrat Hashem, not today, when you go through the Torah and pretend it's Hashem's autobiography, which it is, and you look for turning points. I'm calling it turning points. There are moments, literally moments, in the text that suddenly Hashem switches focus completely. And it starts off with Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim ves haaretz. The first turning point has already happened in the first pasuk, because the magnitude of the universe is so vast, over 1 trillion galaxies. It's so vast, and yet Hashem ignores all of that before the end of the first pasuk. V'ha'aretz haisel toyev v'vayu. For the next 30 pasukim, Hashem switched focus from Hashemayim and is only focused on planet Earth. And that goes on for a mere 30 psukim. After 31 psukim, Hashem's done with planet Earth, with all its beautiful canyons and mountains and landforms and oceans and rivers, plant life, animal life, fowl, all the birds and the insects. And the sixth day he creates man, and Hashem is obsessed in his focus on Adam, mankind. And this goes on for 5 prokim. And all of a sudden, the first person ever in history to be called Ish Tzaddik is Noach. He's the only one. Him with his wife and 3 sons, but he's the only one who's called the Ish Tzaddik. And Hashem says, I'm going to wipe out all mankind, but he deserves to stay. Because he's the Tzaddik so far who qualifies that the whole world is worth continuing because of him. But I'm going to continue after I wipe out everyone else. So you start to see a pattern. Adam ate from the tree. He's not the tzaddik Hashem's looking for. Noach didn't daven, so Hashem said, I'm sorry. You almost qualified, but you didn't pray. The next person to hit the map of the Torah, so to speak, who steals Hashem's focus completely. Hashem becomes obsessed. Forgive me for using that term. It's important to understand because Hashem's focus switches from the entire universe to planet Earth to mankind. Mankind to who's going to be my tzaddik? Wasn't Adam, wasn't Noach. And then right at the end of Perek Yud Aleph, going into Perek Yud Beis, Avram Avinu enters the story, and from this moment onwards, there's no other focus except Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, Yaakov Avinu, and Shiftei Kar. And the next turning point is Har Sinai. And that's when the whole of mankind is completely, forgive me for saying it this way, rejected because they rejected Hashem's offer to be partners in the Torah, and the Jewish people, the only ones, Nasiv and Ishma. And from this moment onwards, there's no focus of anything else. If Hashem mentions landforms or stars, it's only in the focus of the Avos, Imahos, and Bnei Yisrael. If there's any mention of Plishtim and Mitzrim, any nation, it's only in the focus of the context of Klal Yisrael. So you start to see from this moment on till the end of Tanakh, Hashem is only interested in one nation being his Or L'Goyim, the light to the nations, to bring the Torah to the world. So this fits in exactly what the Ben Yehoyada is saying, that if the lowest Jew came, and Moshe Rabbeinu, who knew the power of tefillah, he wouldn't stop. By Chanan, he's davened 100 times, 200 times, 300, 400 times, 500, 515 times. If he said one more word of tefillah, what would have happened? One word. Al toisef daber elai b'davar zeh. Don't you dare say one more word, because if you do, you know, because you're in Shemaim, you know the MS. Tefillah works. I will have to let you in, because tefillah works. But if I let you in, then you will build a Beis HaMikdash, and because you are the tzaddik MS, and your kavanas will be pure, 100% pure, there's no way that Beis HaMikdash will be destroyed. That's why the Mishkan was never destroyed. The Mishkan that Moshe Rabbeinu built was never destroyed. It's hidden beneath the Har HaBayis somewhere. We don't know exactly where. It was once found by an Arab kid, and Jews identified the place and sent a letter to the Chofetz Chaim, who said, "Should cover it up and don't let anybody, don't tell anybody where it is. It's not meant to be revealed till Mashiach comes." But the Mishkan was never destroyed because it was built by a tzaddik emes whose kavanas were 100% pure. So the Beis HaMikdash will not be able to be destroyed. So if the Jews sin, I'll have to destroy them. I leave it to you to decide. Who do you want me to destroy? The Beis HaMikdash or the Jews? So Moshe Rabbeinu said, okay, I won't daven to enter Eretz Yisrael. So the point is that Ben Yehoyada says a similar idea as the Bach, that it could be the lowest Jew would ask, please, Moshe Rabbeinu, daven for Klal Yisrael to come out of Golus. The tzaddik emes had one more tefillah, and Hashem would have been forced to. Do you follow? It's an amazing concept. So this helps us understand this. I'll just finish this part because it's quite extraordinary, and we have to end here. When the Jewish people were in the Midbar, you will find v'sarchan b'maasehem v'asu ha'egel. We really messed up our deeds. We made adultery under the chuppah. That's the way the Gemara describes the chet ha'egel, the golden calf. It was like adultery under the chuppah. That's the Gemara in Shabbos, Tzaddik Beis, I think it is. Katzav HaKadosh Baruch Hu al Yisrael. Hashem got angry with the Jewish people, enraged. Ve'ama, and he said, LeMoshe, haref mimeni, leave me alone. So Moshe Rabbeinu was like, it doesn't make sense. How can you ever be left alone? It's impossible. What you really mean is, don't leave me alone. Because no one can leave you alone. You're everywhere all the time. Haref mimeni, the ashmidam, I will destroy them. And says the Bach here, Kama tzaddikim hayu b'ois hador. How many tzaddikim were there in that generation? V'kama chasidim, and how many chasidim? Moshe v'Aaron v'Yeshua, Eldad v'Medad. Eldad and Medad were the stepbrothers of Moshe Rabbeinu from Yocheved, from a different father, when Amram divorced his wife for a short period. V'ayin zkenim, all the 70 zkenim, they're all tzaddikim. I'm going to wipe them all out. But there's one person whose shav is worth to save against all of them. Ushah hachamim v'talmidim. I'm wiping out all the hachamim, all the talmidim. V'loi asa, and he didn't. Why didn't he? Bishvilam v'loi bitel ha'gzeira ela bishvil Moshe. He was not mevatel the gzeira because of any of them. Their schus would never been enough. Their accumulated schus would never be enough. Only Moshe Rabbeinu. And Moshe Rabbeinu is the ultimate Rahman because he would plead to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I want the last Jew to be close to you. Don't kill him. Even if he's a Rasha. I'll take it on me. So that's what we're going to see, Be'ezrat Hashem, as we unpack this Torah. I think the core, if you want to call it, message is that there's such a thing as a tzaddik of the generation, a hacham of the generation. And Rav Nachman is revealing who that is, not specifically exactly by name, but he's of that sug, he's in that category, to be able to say, this hacham is on such a level, which we're going to see, that can bring down the greatest possible shefa from the highest place of Keter, the highest of the what's the name, the spheres, and bring chokhmah from there to the lowest of the Jews. The Hashem loves every single Jew. And that's only someone who's got the qualities of Moshe Rabbeinu, which Be'ezrat Hashem will unpack more next week. Any questions? Comments?
Yeah. First of all, if the Rebbe is talking about Rachman, and the only Rachman is Moshe Rabbeinu, where is he going with this? What is he telling us?
Yeah.
Usually the Rebbe is trying to tell us something
Yes.
for ourselves.
Yes.
And he's telling us that a manig, and we're all manigim, everybody is
Yes.
a manig of their family, of
Yes.
themselves.
Yes.
And it's interesting, first of all, Hainu Mishu Rachman. Hainu Mishi Yesh Le Rachmanus,
Right.
Yochel Yizmani.
Right.
What is this Rachman? It's like a title.
Right.
What is he telling us?
So he seems to be singling out, at least on Pashat Pshat level, there's only one, Rak, Moshe Rabbeinu. So Rak would be a miut, that's exclusive. It happens to be that in Rav Atiya's Peirush, which is extraordinary, he brings from Tikkun Zoya, Tikkun Ayin, and I'm reading you the Targum. Atid kol zeh litchadesh al dei Moshe b'soif hayamim b'dor ha'acharon. Everything will be renewed. He's in referring to the fact that there's going to be a tzaddik emes. Am I reading the right one? Yeah. B'soif hayamim b'dor ha'acharon, in the last generation. So that's when Moshe Rabbeinu will get tchis hamesim. L'kaim et hakasuv ma shehaya hu sheyiyeh. To be Mekayim, the pasuk which Rav Nachman brought earlier from Koheles, Perik Aleph, whatever happened is what's going to be. Uboy mimchoin shiftoi hishkiach, v'itpashtusoi the spreading of this tzaddik, he b'chol dor v'dor, is actually in every generation. And that is tzaddik v'hacham shemit asik b'Torah ad shishim riboya, that has this special, he's occupied with 600,000 souls. The entire Klal Yisrael, Rav Nachman brings in a different Torah, I don't remember where now, that the whole of Klal Yisrael is actually 600,000 neshamas. All the wives and children, grandchildren, and all the neshamas of the Jews that have come since then, we're all from the same 600,000 neshamas. A neshama can be split into many fragments, but ultimately there's only 600,000 neshamas, which there's one Roya Mehemna, one trusted shepherd, who is this Moshe Rabbeinu, but he's actually spread throughout all the generations. So there's a Moshe Rabbeinu in every generation. And I think there's another Torah, I don't think he brings it here, where every leader every tzaddik has an aspect of Moshe Rabbeinu in him. So that's where you could argue that it's not Rak Moshe Rabbeinu, it is in one context, but actually there's a Moshe Rabbeinu in every generation. So I'm not sure if that's fully answering your question.
It answers Masha Hayu Shiyah.
Yeah.
He is in every generation.
In every generation. So Ad Shishim Riboya Lahashlim Etz Kulam Mehabekam Shelahem. So in order to bring about the final tikkun of every single pagam of every single Jew. So there's a shepherd who cares about every single sheep, every single Jew, and doesn't want anyone to be left behind.
Yeah, also, you see that the Rebbe is trying to tell us something here. He's telling us that whoever's a Rachman could be a Manik, and you need to know how to go with Rachmanus.
Yeah.
And then he's telling you Rachman because there's Moshe Rabbeinu.
Yes.
If he would just be talking about Moshe Rabbeinu, then he would start the Torah with Sif Beis, not Sif Aleph. He would say Rachman because Rachman Moshe Rabbeinu.
Right.
But he's telling you this he's breaking it down that Rachmanus is not what you think Rachmanus is. Rachmanus has boundaries. Rachmanus, there's a place of Asal Rachman and
yes.
even the place of Mutal Rachman.
Yes.
You have to know how to be Rachmanus. Why would it be necessary for me to know this if he wasn't talking to me now?
Yeah. So I do agree that I have to take this as a personal lesson as a father and as a husband, a grandparent, etc. Where's my role as being a manhig of my sphere of influence? I can't answer your question with Pratius because I really have to think it through. But I agree, it has to be that Rav Nachman is saying that you've got to be able to pull something out over here. Even though as we move forward, we'll see that there's the focus appears to be on a tzaddik of the generation who's a hacham of the generation. All in there's three lashonis. There's Rebbe, hacham, and tzaddik. And Be'ez Hashem will get to what it means to be a Rebbe because that's huge, and it's a huge limit on any Rebbe, and everyone in some context is a Rebbe, whether it's a father or an actual teacher. A Rebbe comes from Lashon Rav, so I'm not going to translate it as Rabbi. That's a Christian translation. Please be mochel me. The two-letter root Rav actually means abundance. So what does a Rebbe have to have an abundance of? A lot of. A lot of? Rachmanus. A tremendous amount of Rachmanus. Anyone who read the article from Yoli Landau, is it? In Mishpacha magazine? He's offering major money to any teacher who will not come down hard on a kid in his class because he tells his own personal story of how he was falsely accused of ruining a shidduch, whatever it was, and in doing so, he was thrown out of school. And he was physically beaten by the Rebbe for it. He was thrown out of school, and as it sometimes happens, is the reputation then follows to every single yeshiva you apply for. Not you personally, and he suffered terribly. And I think it's because of the bizyonis that he was sovel that Hashem made him a multi-billionaire. He's worth $3 to $4 billion, whatever, and is using his money to do good for Klal Yisrael. But he wants people to know you have to have, as a Rebbe, you have to have a lot of Rachmanus. What else does a Rebbe have to have a lot of? Wisdom. What else? There's lots and lots of good things. Yirat Shamayim, wisdom, Torah, patience. Think like this. Hanach l'nar al pi darkoi. So darkoi is referring to whom?
Students.
A student. How many students?
Everyone's different.
Darakai goes on one specific student, and each one is different. So if a Rebbe has 20 students in his classroom, how many Darakos does he have to be able to?
20.
He has to have 20 different ways of reaching. So Rav also means lots of ways of reaching different people. So the more people under one's influence, the more I've got to actually think of what's the needs of this person and understand their profile, understand their personality, and to the best of my ability, address it accordingly. So we're going to see that the ultimate Chacham is, as described here in Tikkun Ezra, is the one who's able to see the needs of every single individual and bring about the tikkun for their pagam. So that obviously is not a stum tzaddik, it's a towering tzaddik. But I agree, Rachmanus is also very much about boundaries. It's knowing exactly how far to go. I'll end off with a story. I think I shared this with you. Rabbi Yaakov Greenwald, Alav Shalom, he lived here in Monsey many years. He retired and passed away in Eretz Yisrael, but he was very, very close to many of the greatest tzaddikim of the previous generation, including the Satmar Rebbe, Rabbi El Teitelbaum, and mostly to the Steipler, and very much the Manshur Shiva. Manshur Shiva was a towering tzaddik. I'm very, very grateful to Hashem that I went to many times for eitzes and for brachas, and if it weren't for him, I think I would have been completely destroyed in the yeshiva I was in, because of the hisnagtus to Breslov. It was beyond. They burnt Svarim, and anyone who believed in Breslov was called Hitler. But I don't want to say who, because that person did not have a good end, and that's very typical when people go that very, very far. So the Master Shiva gave me tremendous chizuk, and Rabbi Greenwald told me that he was once on a Friday learning together with the Master Shiva. He used to go to him for every Elul for a whole month. And they were learning together Gemara, and the phone rings. The Master Shiva picks up the phone, and someone in America, it's a 7-hour difference, someone of a Talmud Chacham of tremendous stature was in a very, very serious car crash and is being flown by helicopter to Connecticut, I've forgotten the name of the hospital there, and I was asking for please to daven for him, and the Mashra Shiva had tears coming down his face as he was empathizing and with the family and saying he's going to daven for them. The Rabbi Greenwald told me the second he put the phone down, he went back into the learning as though nothing happened. And Rabbi Greenwald's first response to that was, how do you be so callous? How do you switch from Rachmanus to we're learning this second? And he understood that when a person's in control of their midas, they understand that right now is not the time to say, you know what, it's so hard for me to hear this news, I can't learn now. No. You're always feeling your thoughts. This is where you got to be in control, because this is what controls your feelings. And now it's time to get back to learning. And it's an amazing limud. That Rachmanus has boundaries, and those boundaries are to help us be in control of our minds. So we're going to see, as Rav Hashem, very soon, next week, that the Ikar Ha'adam is Hu Hadas. So Rav Nachman brings, and that it's the Rahman who knows how to bring down to the lowest and the highest to inject the das of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shashem Hu Elokim. We're going to get to it. That is the only real das that the Tzaddik Emes really wants to inject in all of us. And that's the das to know I can control me. Hashem is in my world every second. Sorry for going over time. Baruch Tiyah.
There's going to be a nice journey.
What?
There's going to be a nice journey.
Yeah.
Especially with you going through this, and we do this.
Thank you. Baruch Tiyah.